I'm very happy to be able to be here with you. And I want to thank Sarah for inviting me to this convening, but also to thank all of you who come to these circles, to these councils, to make these conversations possible. I think that these are critically important conversations that are so desperately needed at this time. So thank you to Sarah and to all of you. And I believe I saw Walter in there, so I just want to say hi to Walter as well. And I have um, I have been really thinking about what do I want to do here this evening, and I decided that I'm going to defy my publisher, and I'm going to read a little bit to you from the new book. And also there's a little piece in here at the end that's something I've just been kind of playing with a little bit for my blog, but hopefully it's seamless and you can't tell the difference. So you can you can keep your cameras on or off. You can keep your eyes open or closed, whatever suits you. As I read this reflection to you, and I hope that there's something in here for this very interesting time that we find ourselves in that um, provides a bit of foundation that you can find purchase upon for your next step. This is starting out with a quote from Sacred Instructions. Oneness is not a measure of sameness. It is a transcending of our resistance to difference and embracing the full integration of our diversity. When we willingly embrace the miraculous beauty of who each of us is individually, we can open to the full possibility of who we can become collectively. In my first book, I briefly addressed the concept that oneness and sameness are not equal. As we cycle toward this time of change and feel the distancing of increased polarization, an understanding of this truth feels increasingly important. There seems to be universal acceptance that we are indeed moving toward a shift in consciousness, one that marks a critical decision point for our species. One of the most fear-inducing aspects of this time is the large-scale retrenchment that we are experiencing across the globe. Though retrenchment is a term that is often used to describe financial curtailment, it also defines an aspect of the natural growth, decline, and regrowth process of our learning. When I'm teaching, I use the metaphor of a moving tire to describe this process. Envision the movement of a tire. Then see yourself as a passenger traveling in the tracks. Place yourself in the cycle of movement at the point where the tire leaves the road and begins to rise. This upward movement signifies a phase of conscious growth, where we gain theoretical understanding. Once you reach the edge of the top peak, you travel across the top of the tire, experiencing a brief period of forward movement. This symbolizes the process of integrating the portions of the lesson that we have been able to metabolize. What happens next is a period of steep descent, represented by the tire's journey back toward the road. This represents our return to the lesson to gain the insights we have yet to learn. Here, we are squeezed between the tire and the pavement, feeling the immense discomfort of the friction that is required for movement. This is where I believe we are currently sitting, in the dark, afraid and angry, filled with grief, trying to manage the pain and the pressure of this movement-generating process. The discomfort of this time brings our next set of questions. How big are our tires? And how far will we allow ourselves to be dragged backward before we once again begin to rise and cycle forward? The answers to those questions are determined by our choices. Will we choose to stand solidly amid this pressure, embodying and applying the wisdom we have acquired? Or will we abandon the ground we have gained and allow ourselves to be driven back, behind the familiar walls of the separation illusion. If we want to reach the leading edge of evolution, the solid ground that allows us to leap consciously into our next stage of development, we must first allow for an integration of our collective learning, not just as a species, but as an entire living system. This is a time for radical spiritual and emotional growth, the culminating season of lessons that take lifetimes to learn and longer still to embody. This growth is not measured by political cycles, decades, or even generations. It is measured by ages. This is a powerful shift, a clear rite of passage for a population that has been living under feudalism and the childlike dependence of colonial patriarchal rule for the last 5,000 years. It is not one step, but a series of shifts that leads to our next opening. The goal of this movement is not arrival in some nirvana-like future. It is a humble move toward greater unity and integration. This is not movement into a homogenized whole, but as distinct, interconnected spirals moving collectively toward greater spiritual coherence. Toward that goal, we must avoid the alluring ploy of spiritual bypassing and the obstructive nature of purity-based exclusion. These mental traps lock us into binaries of immobility, all or nothing, this or that, black or white, and all the other limitations of thinking that reduce our capacity to expand, integrate, and grow. We must remain open to the possibility that our ideas can be enhanced by allowing them to interweave with the thoughts and ideas of others, not just those we agree with, but also with those who seem radically different. When diverse viewpoints are valued and shared, the entire community becomes wiser, more tolerant, and adaptable. This fluidity keeps the society supple and reduces instances of break and rupture. My people, Weh'na Ha'mu and Pescatamakati, are people of the circle. We value the gifts gained through the merging of multiple perspectives. And we recognize that we are stronger when we think and feel together, through conflict and toward consensus, which is not always full agreement. We are not confined by the narrowness of individualized thinking. Rather, we are oriented toward an acceptable alignment with a collective shared truth and arrival at a decision that we can all accept. Culturally, we see ourselves as a part of one living system, citizens in an expanding ecosystem that is learning to embody internal harmony while simultaneously integrating our being with all other living beings and the external systems that we create. This is not accomplished through conquest. It comes through the respectful balancing of our reality with the realities spinning around us. This integration begins with the first meeting. When I introduce myself in my language, I place myself in relational context, first with the lands and waters of my homelands. This connects me with all my relatives living on and in the land, in and along the waters, and those moving across the sky. Then I connect myself with a distinct people, specifically the Penobscot and the Pescatamakati, including all ancestors and descendants from those lines. Finally, I align myself with my birth family, made up of expanding clan systems that multiply out with each set of grandparents and then spiral back to connect me to our original ancestors, Kachiniwisk and Ekjamundo. When I orient myself in this way, I am also integrating myself into deep time, allowing it to circle around me, whispering the wisdom of those who have come before me and the guidance of those who will follow. This process helps to ground me and keep me rooted in place, allowing me to see the world that is spiraling around me with greater clarity and to find my place within it. This framework forms a core organizing principle for my people, a sense of inborn belonging with the entire living world. As an Indigenous woman, I was raised within a spatial framework. We are spatially oriented people. We are not time-oriented. What this means for us is that we are rooted in place. We are connected to the places that we come from. As Skidginawak peoples, we recognize deep kinship with our homelands. We recognize ourselves as part of a larger living family that includes all of the living beings that exist within the spaces that we occupy. This doesn't mean that we are not aware of time. We carry time with us in 4 directions. We carry deep ancestral time, which includes both our historical wounds and the strength of our genetic inheritance. We carry our immediate past, the time we've spent with our parents and grandparents, the time that sets the patterns we are currently weaving, or the ones that we are working to unravel. We carry our present lifetime, filled with hopes, dreams, expectations, and disappointments. And we carry future time, the beacon that guides us toward the world that we most want to create. Within each of these epochs, there is a complex mix of emotions, realities, and responsibilities that add depth and breadth to what we have carried and what we will carry from this point forward. All of these woven experiences become the weft of the fabric that transports the thread of life across time. Many have emerged into this time more nimble and more aware of the fact that we are walking on a path that is unprecedented, with a destination that is unknown and perhaps even unknowable. And given all the uncertainty within the unfolding polycrisis and metacrisis, these unknown aspects can amplify our collective anxiety. So what do we do in this place of pause that we are sharing together this evening? How might we use this time together to fortify us for the journey ahead? We can offer one another moments of deep listening, presence, compassion, encouragement, and solidarity. We can also prepare our inner pathways to make ourselves more able to receive generosity of spirit, new perspective, and mechanisms for joy. Together, we can alchemize some of the heavy, hard, and tangled things that we carry, lightening our burdens and giving ourselves more space for inspiration, clarity, and honesty about the reality that we have created or been handed. Then we can consciously engage with the symbiotic process of healing ourselves and our wounded planet. If we can imagine that this current moment is not somewhere that we ended up mistakenly or even arbitrarily, rather it is a place of opening that we have walked toward purposely, a conscious point of entry where the darkness of the moment is providing the perfect backdrop for the amplification of the light. Maybe we can change the way that we see and feel about this time, realizing that it is not only an unfolding tragedy, but also an opportunity for a collective affirmation of life-sustaining growth, not of industries or bottom lines, but in our dawning awareness of our need for one another. Maybe then we can forgive ourselves for what we didn't or still don't know. Maybe we can make space for the grief that we carry and the angst that we feel due to the enormity of the work before us. And perhaps we can offer more patience and compassion for the stumbling steps that we and others are taking on this unsteady ground. Maybe we can walk together into this new time with an eagerness to learn what we haven't known, to see with new clarity, and to hear the things we thought we knew. And in doing so, open ourselves to the vision that emerges when we become willing to soften our eyes and open our hearts. So let this be the contemplation that brings us into conversation together. Sarah, that is what felt alive for me in this moment, that I want to share with you all this evening.